A teacher just wanted to return home after another exhausting day of classes. But an unexpected argument between two young men on the sidewalk changed everything. As she approached to intervene, she was struck, not by them, but by something much bigger that no one could have foreseen. An unknown man appeared at the right moment, and what he witnessed on the street revealed secrets, regrets, and the chance for redemption of a young man everyone had already given up on. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is the Linda's Stories channel. I hope you enjoy this story. The day was slowly ending as Linda Reynolds, 45, gathered her materials in the small teacher's lounge. The last pages of essays still needed to be graded, but she decided to save this task for later. She was exhausted after a series of 4 classes for high school groups, all with more than 30 restless teenagers. The public school where she had worked for nearly 2 decades didn't have the ideal facilities, but Linda never thought about giving up on those young people. After saying goodbye to the colleagues who remained, she adjusted the warm bag on her shoulder and went on her way. The sun was already setting, but it was still hot, and small drops of sweat trickled down her forehead as she walked down the main avenue of the suburban neighborhood. Her small apartment was 20 minutes away, a walk she took every day to save on transport fare, a sum that, accumulated over the month, allowed her to purchase extra school supplies for students who couldn't afford the costs. The streets were busy that late afternoon. Workers were returning to their homes, children played on the sidewalks, and local shops still kept their doors open. Linda walked distractedly, thinking about the overdue electricity bill and the refrigerator repair that would consume a large portion of her next payment. Her thoughts were interrupted when she noticed an unusual commotion in front of Mr. Paul's grocery store. 2 young men were arguing heatedly, their bodies tense, hands gesturing with restrained violence. A small circle of onlookers already started to form around them. Linda instinctively slowed her pace, considering crossing the street to avoid the confrontation. It was then that her gaze caught the face of one of the boys, and her heart skipped a beat. Ryan Cooper. There was no mistaking that profile even after nearly 2 years. Ryan had been her student in sophomore year of high school. An intelligent boy with lively eyes, but marked by a restlessness she could never completely calm. He always occupied the last spot in the back row, alternating between brilliant participation and inexplicable absences. His notebook, when opened, revealed surprisingly organized notes and detailed drawings in the margins. Linda always believed in his potential, even when other teachers had already given up on him. But Ryan left school at the beginning of his junior year, after a series of absences and disciplinary problems. Linda tried to make contact several times, calls to the number on his school records, visits to the family house that never found anyone home, messages left with neighbours. She never received a response. The boy had vanished, like so many others she had seen disappear over the years, swallowed by tough circumstances and hasty choices. And now there he was. Taller, with a more angular face, messy hair, now laden with an anger that Linda did not recognise. Without thinking about the consequences, she approached the guys who were fighting. Her heart was pounding in her chest, while her hands clenched the strap of her bag with unnecessary force. "Ryan!" Her voice came out choked with unexpected emotion. "Please stop it." The young man turned toward the voice, his face momentarily transforming into an expression of surprise and recognition. That instant of hesitation was enough for the other young man, consumed by the anger of the argument, to seize the moment of distraction. With a sudden movement, he pushed Ryan, who instinctively moved to the side, causing the impact to hit Linda squarely. The teacher's body staggered backward, losing balance. Her bag slipped off her shoulder, scattering pens and papers on the ground. She felt the world spin for a second, expecting the impact against the asphalt. But the collision never came. A man of about 50, who had been watching the scene closely, quickly stepped forward and caught Linda by the arm, preventing her fall. With a firm movement, he pulled her back and placed himself between her and the young men. "Step back!" he shouted, his deep voice resonating in the small crowd that now surrounded them. Linda, still regaining her balance, observed the stranger. He was a man of medium height, grey hair at the temples, and a face marked by deep expression lines. He wore simple but clean clothes, and carried a shopping bag in his left hand. Without taking his eyes off the young people, the man leaned slightly towards Linda and murmured in a voice heavy with bitterness, "I know that Ryan well. He's from the neighborhood. That boy will never change. Sooner or later he will find what he's looking for." The words hit the teacher like small daggers. She wanted to protest, to say it wasn't true, that Ryan was just a boy who needed a chance, but her voice got stuck in her throat. Meanwhile, the arrival of more people and the increasing noise seemed to dissipate the tension between the boys. The other young man stepped back, still casting defiant looks, and Ryan, after a brief moment when his eyes met Linda's, turned his back and quickly disappeared into the crowd. "Thank you for the help," Linda finally managed to say to the man who supported her, as she bent down to gather her belongings. "You should be more careful, ma'am. These youngsters don't respect anyone nowadays," he replied, helping her pick up some papers. "Especially this Ryan. He's already caused trouble for half the people around here." Linda just nodded, without the strength to contradict him. She thanked him again and continued on her way home, but her mind couldn't shake off the image of Ryan, the glance they shared, the judgment in the stranger's words. That night was sleepless for Linda. Lying in her simple bed, she relived the scene repeatedly. The young man's face appeared in flashes, first as the quiet teenager from her classes, then as the angry young man from that afternoon. The stranger's phrase echoed like a sentence. There will never be a solution. It wasn't the first time she heard words like that. In the teacher's lounge, during class councils, in parent meetings, there was always someone ready to declare that a certain student was lost, that there was no more hope. She remembered how many times she had heard that about Ryan, and how many times she had refused to believe it. The next morning, determined to find him, the teacher stopped by the grocery store before heading to school. Paul, an elderly man of Italian descent who knew everyone in the neighborhood, gave her valuable information. Ryan worked as a loader in a construction material warehouse a few blocks away. For 3 days, Linda stopped by the place after classes. Finally, on her 4th attempt, she saw him leaving the warehouse, his body visibly tired after a day of hard work. When their eyes met, the young man thought about running away again, but something about the determined stance of his former teacher made him stop. Sitting on a park bench with the sun setting in the background, the initial silence gave way to a slow conversation, full of pauses and sighs. Ryan talked about his life after leaving school, the temporary jobs, the difficulties in finding employment without a completed high school education, the friendships that led him to wrong choices. He spoke about sleepless nights in a rented room he could barely afford, about the shame of meeting old classmates, about the silent despair that was gradually consuming him. "I wanted to go back, you know," he confessed, looking at his own calloused hands. "But it feels like it's too late. Everyone has already given up on me. And maybe they're right." Linda observed the young man in front of her. There was sadness in his eyes, but also a spark she recognized well, the same she had seen when he solved math problems with unusual ease, or when he discussed literature with a surprising depth for his age. "Ryan, look at me," she asked, her voice firm. "You still have a chance. I know you do." The young man's eyes met hers, incredulous at first, then slowly filling with an emotion he couldn't name. "How can you be so sure?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Because I know you. Because I've seen what you're capable of. And because it's never too late to start over." Those words, simple but sincere, penetrated the layers of disbelief Ryan had built around himself. He doubted whether he could do it, or if he still had a chance to change, but he decided not to run away from her. He had nothing to lose. In the following weeks, Linda helped Ryan enroll in an adult education program. She would pick out books from her small personal library for him, dedicate a few hours of her Sundays to help him with more difficult subjects, and constantly encourage him not to give up when challenges arose. It was not an easy process. Ryan often arrived exhausted to his night classes after long days of work. There were moments of discouragement, a desire to give it all up again. Some people in the neighborhood continued to look at him with suspicion, as if they expected him to fail at any moment. But Linda remained steadfast by his side. She introduced him to other teachers who believed in him, found social programs offering scholarships, and helped him organize a resume that highlighted his skills rather than his shortcomings. Time went on. Ryan completed high school with grades that surprised even Linda. Encouraged by her, he applied for a business administration course at a public university, and to his own surprise was accepted. The college years were no less challenging. Ryan continued working during the day and studying at night, facing fatigue and the doubts that occasionally came back to haunt him. But with each obstacle overcome, his confidence grew a little more. On a sunny December Sunday, a few years after that encounter at the grocery store, Linda sat in the university auditorium audience. Her eyes welled up when she saw Ryan, dressed in a black gown, receive his bachelor's degree in business administration. Amidst the applause, their eyes met, and both knew that this moment was a shared victory. At the graduation party, Ryan introduced Linda to his girlfriend, a young education student he had met at the university. He talked about his new job at a logistics company, his plans to pursue a postgraduate degree, and the small apartment he had started to pay for. His eyes shone as he described the future he could now envision. "Professor Linda, I will never be able to thank you enough," he said, holding her hands in his. "You were the only person who believed in me when I no longer believed in myself." She smiled, feeling a joy that few would fully understand. "You always had everything you needed within you, Ryan. I just helped you see it." 3 years later, Linda received a wedding invitation. Ryan and Amanda, his college sweetheart, were building a family. At the simple yet emotional ceremony, Linda couldn't hold back her tears when Ryan, in his speech, shared the story of how a stubborn teacher had changed the course of his life. At the end of the party, Ryan sought her out for a private conversation. He shared that he was helping other young people in the neighborhood return to their studies, creating a mentoring project inspired by his own journey. "I learned that sometimes all someone needs is for a single person to believe in them," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You did that for me, teacher, and now I want to do that for others." Linda observed the man in front of her, confident, accomplished, full of purpose. She remembered the restless teenager in the last row, the disheartened young man on the park bench, all the transformations she had witnessed over the years. And in her heart echoed a certainty that had guided her entire life as an educator. Even when everyone else has given up, the faith of a single person can be enough to light a path of transformation. As she walked home that night, Linda reflected on how many Ryans were still waiting for someone to see beyond appearances, to believe in their potential when no one else did. And although she knew not all stories ended like his, she would continue trying, one student at a time, one life at a time. In the end, sometimes all we need is a single outstretched hand to help us stand up when we fall. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.